Back, we continue our discussion here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. The Steelers win their first preseason game 20-12, as you saw on KDKA-TV. Interesting performances. One thing I think I've seen here, and Will Graves, you can tell me, I don't think Landry Jones is in jeopardy of losing his backup job. I thought Dobbs did a pretty good job responding to what was a terrible start, but your overall take on what you saw from some of the guys in the draft class from 2007?
Well, you know, I think you have to be impressed first with T.J. Watt. I mean, I think that nobody would have thought that, even if you had said, what's the best case scenario that you'd like to see from the first game, 2 sacks in the first 5 snaps or whatever. I mean, I think he showed that he is a guy that can be a player. Dobbs, I mean, he was sloppy, but I think he provides an element that Landry can. I mean, he's a guy that can get around. The second pick was terrible, but it's his first time out. He threw a great pass to Kobe Hamilton. I think that he kind of gives a dynamic. He's a guy that can run the ball, too. I mean, I'm not going to say that Landry didn't practice today. And I think the longer that Landry's out, that gap is going to narrow maybe more quickly than we realize.
Yeah, these abdominal injuries for these guys can be brutal, man. It can be a while. If he's not back practicing and playing, I think that's really going to hurt him. Obviously, he knows Haley's offense inside and out. I thought Dobbs showed something coming back from that horrible start. Though not just one pass to Hamilton, he had 2 very nice passes to him. Showed me something that he stayed in the game. I'm not quite ready to anoint him as the backup based on one game against reserves on the other side. But at least he showed something by hanging in there, because that could have turned into a really ugly night.
Well, I think we also learned that if Arthur Moats got to play against the 5th stringers every week, he'd be Lawrence Taylor. I mean, that was pretty impressive to watch. But I agree with both of these guys. I will say this: if Dobbs continues to get better and better and better, I mean, it's probably is it out of the realm of the possibility that they might cut Landry Jones? I don't know. We didn't see enough of that on Friday, but if Landry Jones continues to be hurt, and Dobbs plays all 4 of the preseason games and gets better and better to the point where they've got a comfort level with him, there's some money to be saved. There's not a ton, but there's some money to be saved.
You need 3 quarterbacks, though, Paul. They're not going to just go into the season with 2 guys.
Although you never know. You're watching what happened with Dallas last year.
Have they under Colbert? I don't believe they ever have.
No, they haven't, and they won't. And Landry signed. He's here. Just a matter of when he comes back. Ron, let me ask you about Martavis Bryant. He was back today. I have said all along I'm bullish on this guy. I think he's shown me over the course of the last year, which I thought was going to be the toughest part of what he had to go through. He's done everything, multiple tests. He's done everything he was supposed to do. Now, I got off to a kind of a rocky start here, and he was delayed getting back on the practice field. Do you think he can be the kind of receiver and pick up where he left off?
Oh, absolutely. I think he has a chance to be one of the best receivers in the league. Ben has said that. Said he has no clue how good he is. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that one stumble and he's going to be gone here. He screws up again, it's over. And, I mean, it only takes one. You know, you can be perfect 60 days in a row, and then on the 61st day, you screw up and you're gone. But he's just so big, so fast, hands, talent. I just think he has a chance to be really a fine player if he stays clean, and I'm going to try to give him the benefit of the doubt and hope that he does.
Ray Fittipaldo, who covers the team for the Post-Gazette, did a story, I think it was last year, about the points, the difference when Bryant has played since he's been around and when he hasn't played. And it's like 8 a game or so, 8 points a game or something like that. So obviously he's worth a lot to this offense. And I think if you put him in, he's healthy and he's focused for the entire season, I don't know that anyone's beating the Steelers.
Well, I mean, I was at practice today, and they ran him out with the ones immediately. There wasn't sort of like, welcome back, go run with the 3rd team for a little while. I mean, he was in there in their first set they had AB on one side, and he lined up in the slot next to him and then ran in motion. And when you have Le'Veon out there, when Juju, who will be out there full-time at some point, I mean, that is a pretty formidable lineup. I mean, can you imagine him in a slot situation? I mean, the guy would be kind of unstoppable. I mean, he's unstoppable on the outside. However, I think he knows that he's one mistake away. I found him to be personal from the day that he got here. I remember once he was a rookie when he wasn't playing, I talked to him and he said, look, man, this isn't a fairy tale. And I think he knows he's got demons he's got to wrestle with, and he knows he's one mistake away. Today his mother was at practice and he was composed. He said all the things you want him to say. Now he's got to do all the things that you want him to do to stay with this team.
All right, let's talk about the secondary because it was banged up. We saw a lot of guys not in action first day. I know some got back today. But Paul Zeise, when you look at it, they still have unproven commodities. One of them is Senquez Golson, even though he's in his third year, as he says, his first year. He's been injured. So my question about the guys, Cam Sutton didn't play. He needs to be what he is. Brian Allen did play, looked pretty good, another rookie. Artie Burns back today. But what about a guy like Golson, a second-round pick? When do you give up on him? Is it now?
I don't know how you couldn't give up on him if he doesn't get back into camp and show you something really quickly. I mean, forget about the fact that he's been injured. When was the last time this guy's played a competitive football game? I mean, I'm not saying it's not like riding a bike, but I have a hard time believing you can come back from, what, 2.5 years or 3 years or whatever it's been and be ready to step on the NFL field and play. So
I can't see him keeping him another year on IR. He's running out of time here. I thought Mike Hilton the other night had a really strong game, and he's had a good camp too. Cockrell's done some things in the past. Gay still around. I'm still worried about this secondary. I think Burns is going to be fine. I think the safeties are going to be fine, but you still got to worry about the cornerbacks.
I mean, I think that you can tell that the coaching staff is losing patience. Kevin Colbert's losing patience. It's not, look, Senquez is not setting out trying to get injured, but it keeps happening. He signs a 4-year deal as a rookie, so the money's already sort of set. You're not losing a ton if you cut him. It's not like it's going to free up millions of dollars in cap space. But I just think, they have no idea what they have on their hands anymore, and he's running out of time. There are other options. Will Gase just sort of hanging around, and he'll probably be the guy, I imagine, if we get to
I would say this.
What's Mike Tomlin say about the moving train, man? It's going to be leaving Golson. He's going to be back at the station here. He's got to practice.
Yeah, I would say the other thing is if William Gay is still your slot guy halfway through the season, it's not a good sign. I think he's a resilient guy. He's a veteran player. But he's got some real limitations, and now he's 11 years in. If they haven't found somebody that can beat him out for that spot, I don't think that's a good sign.
I think if they give Sutton time to get healthy, I think that they'll be.
They like him, right?
And he would be the guy, like maybe the heir
shorts, right? Let's see what he does.
Sean Davis also not practicing, also still out. So
I'm not as worried about him because he knows what he's doing out there. I'd love to see what Sutton does.
When we come back, we're going to talk about two guys who are right now currently not in an NFL camp, Le'Veon Bell and Colin Kaepernick. That's coming up right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown.